Welcome everybody to this event, the first of a new series of knowledge sharing events, our K2 series from the London Profession Collaboration. My name is Anna Ambrose, I'm founder and director of the LPC, and just very briefly for anyone who hasn't come across this before, the LPC is a not-for-profit initiative addressing unequal access to good work. And since our launch in early 2020, we've been supporting small and medium-sized employers in London to create new apprenticeships for disadvantaged Londoners with a particular focus on entry-level opportunities for young people to support them to progress into and in work. We've created over 1,200 apprenticeships since then, including leveraging over £11.5 million in unspent levy funds from our very generous network of large business supporters. So thank you for joining us for this discussion about recruiting young talent for your apprenticeships. And thank you especially for our panel today. We're really delighted to be joined by Simon Bozzoli, Gavin Deane, Melissa Milner, Talin and Olivia Foley. I will let themselves introduce themselves shortly, but suffice to say, we have representatives of employers, of third sector organisations, of training providers, and really pleased that we have an apprentice joining us to share their perspective today as well. Just to start with a couple of housekeeping points before we get started, please do use the Q&A function for questions. I think most of us are probably fairly familiar with these kinds of events these days. We'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A and collating some of those for later on this morning. Do feel free to use the chat function to introduce yourselves and for any general discussion, but we may not spot any questions that you pop in there. If you're tweeting today, if you could use the hashtag LPCK2, that would be wonderful, and do include us, our handle in your tweets. We are at LPC_progression, or if you're on LinkedIn and want to post, include us in your post there as well. So I just wanted to start today by setting a bit of context for these conversations before I turn to our panel. I think the trends around apprenticeship starts over recent years are probably fairly well known now, but just to lay those out, we have what I kind of think of as this Venn diagram really, with three circles with this big overlap in the middle, and those represent big falls in the number of apprenticeship starts for young people, those at entry levels, and those offered by smaller businesses. And to kind of, I guess, oversimplify a little, I think we can cite two really big reasons for that. Firstly, that the introduction of the apprenticeship levy has incentivised larger levy-paying businesses to offer more apprenticeships at higher levels and to older and better qualified workers in order to use those funds. So we've seen this swing away from perhaps the traditional kind of entry-level apprenticeships. And just to say that within that, there is a good news story in terms of the kind of rise of degree apprenticeships opening up fantastic routes into what we might think of as kind of higher status professions for people who, for whatever reason, don't want to go to university, and that is a really good part of what's happened. But then secondly, the 2017 changes brought with them a lot of complexities for smaller businesses, so for non-apprenticeship levy paying businesses, in the pursuit of greater quality within the system, I think, but without the support that smaller businesses perhaps need to navigate some of that complexity, which means that we've also, alongside that increase in higher level apprenticeships in larger businesses, we've also seen the traditional small business employers of young people in accessible entry-level roles in their communities offering far fewer apprenticeships. And that really matters for young people, and it matters especially for people from disadvantaged backgrounds who the Social Mobility Commission have shown have the most to gain from apprenticeships in terms of pay progression, but are kind of losing out at every step currently. And then thinking about today's discussion, on the flip side, we know firsthand from all of our work supporting businesses, and you can hardly miss it in the press at the moment, that everybody is finding getting the staff they need incredibly tough right now. We've got this kind of compound effect of a lower number of people in the labour market due to Brexit, due to long-term illness, all those things that are kind of taking people out of the workforce, plus the cost of living crisis, which we know is forcing people to chase every extra possible pound that they can manage to earn for very, very understandable reasons. And all those things are making hiring, I think, eye-wateringly difficult. And, I think we see that right across sectors. I'm not sure there's a sector that isn't feeling that, but I think we see it especially powerfully in some of the really important sectors that we work with a lot in early years, in social care, in construction. So we've got employers needing to find talent for gaps in their workforce. We've got groups of young people who perhaps aren't able to find the kinds of entry-level apprenticeship opportunities they need. And it feels as though there's a really huge opportunity there to think differently about who we recruit and about how we go about it. And yet the most recent Youth Voice Census report from Youth Employment UK showed that only 28.7% of young people surveyed there thought that employers were supportive of hiring them. And I think that has to send a message to us in terms of how we're thinking about this challenge. So this discussion today is about those challenges, that really big opportunity, and how we can make sure more young people encounter employers that they feel are really supportive of hiring them, and how we can make sure that more employers are able to hire the really great young people they need to meet their skills needs. So that's enough from me. If I could go to our panel, first of all, just to ask you to introduce yourself and your organisation briefly, and share a really quick thought on, just from your perspective, why you think this is a really important conversation for us to be having. And Simon, I'll come to you first, if that's okay.
Sure. Morning, Anna. Morning, everybody, and thanks so much for having me today. So my name's Simon Bozzoli. I'm the founder and chief exec of LDN Apprenticeships. So our mission as an organization is to create opportunities for diverse talent to realize their potential. We've been delivering apprenticeships for 12 years now. Contrary to, different to many other apprenticeship providers, the vast majority of our apprentices, over 85% of them, are under the age of 25 years old, and they're predominantly people who we are supporting into their first job. So we're very experienced, and we've supported thousands of young people through our programs over the past 12 years. This conversation is just so important right now, particularly. We're in, as Anna's just said, such a sort of interesting and challenging economic situation at the moment. The UK workforce has shrunk significantly over the past few years. And, you know, what we're finding is employers need to be thinking more and more about tapping every available pool of talent they can to meet their skills needs. And young people present an obvious opportunity in this context, and effectively engaging them to work for you brings huge benefits in terms of competitiveness, productivity, but also in terms of diversity, loyalty, future-proofing your workforce. And finally, I would just say, I think it's the right thing to do, isn't it? Young people feel the pinch of tough economic times more than pretty much any other group. And so there's a huge imperative for us all to be considering how we support and enable young people to be successful in the world of work.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Simon. Melissa, if I could come to you, and then if you want to pass to Talin as well.
Of course. Thank you, Anna, and thank you, LPC, for inviting us to take part today. It's a really great event. So I'm Melissa. I'm Director of Communications and Engagement at Catch 22, and we are a charity and a social business. And we deliver alternative public services across a range of areas, including justice, education, with young people and families, and probably most importantly for today's discussion, around the area of employability and skills. We are also an improved apprenticeship provider, recently got a good rating from Ofsted, which we're really delighted about. Thanks, Gavin, for the thumbs up there. But in relation to employability, we run a number of kind of different employability programs that aim to support those who are furthest from the job market and face kind of barriers to work into good, sustainable jobs. So that's really what hopefully we'll be able to talk a bit about today. And I'm really delighted to be joined by Talin, who is one of our apprentices currently working for the AA. Talin, do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Hello, Talin, and I'm one of the apprentices on the Catch 22 group, dealing with customer service, and it's just really helped me deal with customer facing problems and how to go about that correctly, just to help customers that we deal with. I'm not too good with this, so I do apologise.
That's fine, Talin. We'll get into a proper discussion later, I'm sure. But just in terms of why I guess it's so important, and Talin, I'm sure you have views on this as well, but I think, as Simon said, you know, it is about employers tapping into that sort of expanded talent pool, really, and thinking beyond their perhaps traditional sort of recruitment routes. But also something we're really interested in at Catch 22 is about young people going into good jobs, you know, not just any job, but actually a good, sustainable job. And I think apprenticeships allow that. You know, you can really sort of grow with an apprenticeship. It can give you those kind of the skills and experience you need to actually have a career, and not just a kind of stopgap job. So yeah, thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, and great to have you both joining us today. Olivia, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Olivia Foley. Oh, it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me as well. Nice to be here with everybody today. I'm Olivia Foley. I'm the founder and director of Hungry Caterpillar Day Nurseries, and we're a group of 10 children's day nurseries across West London, Buckinghamshire and Harrow. We employ 160 plus staff, and during the past year we've actually grown our apprentice scheme from around 10 to 40 plus. So we've been on a massive journey this year with the help of LPC and levy transfer funding. And we currently have staff doing level 2s, level 3s and level 5s within our scheme. And I think for us, the reason we've gone on this journey and recognise the importance of attracting talent and offering apprenticeships at this level is because of the workforce crisis that's out there, and the need to bring young people into roles where they can develop proper professional careers. And we're really passionate about doing that, not just for our own workforce needs, but also for the greater good of our industry, which is almost on its knees in terms of staffing. So we feel like it's an opportunity to put back into the industry, as well as support individual young people.
Great, thank you very much, Olivia, and we look forward to hearing a little bit more about how you've gone about doing that later. Gavin, last but very much not least.
The last, never mind, that's okay. Simon did an incredible job there of giving an overview of the apprenticeship provider world, and thank you so much, Anna, for the invite as well, and well done, Talin, for speaking as well. I was actually asked as an apprentice to talk on an event like this back in the day, and my left leg was going, I could barely speak, so well done to you for joining us today. So yeah, good morning, I'm Gavin Deane. I'm the founder, chief exec of Educationwise Academy. We're an independent training provider. We very recently had our Ofsted inspection and managed to get outstanding across the board, which we're incredibly proud of. Bit of my sort of background is that I actually started as an apprentice. I left school with no qualifications. I'm 44 now. I found out when I was 22 that I was actually dyslexic, which explained quite a lot, and maybe why I wasn't engaged at school. And I've really sort of taken that kind of working with maybe disengaged but also talented individuals, just to show them an alternative route. Very much I will always beat the drum for university, for college and for academic routes for those that it's right for. But probably similar to Simon, but certainly not at that scale. We have very much a 50-50, around about 50% of our apprentices are sort of 19 to 24 or younger, but we have a lot of apprentices that are in work as well. So for us, it's about demystification, if that's a good word to use, and really kind of just simplifying what is a fantastic option. And quite often we'll have from employers saying to us, so all I've got to do is pay a smaller bit of money or no money, and you can use my tax to help me build my business. I'm confused. And sometimes it's just actually simplifying that without it sounding like a sale. We're huge advocates of lifelong learning. I believe that the apprenticeship is just the beginning of that learning journey. And that's really our role as a training provider. And whilst we're an outstanding provider, we don't hide away with that. We'll be out there supporting and helping all of our colleagues and people within the marketplace to get them on it as well. And Catch 22 getting there good is absolutely fantastic. So congratulations, especially given the breadth of delivery that you do. But I'm really pleased to be here today to speak with everybody, and thank you.
Right. Thank you, Gavin, and we'll hear a little bit more about some of your work with your community, particularly in a bit. So Melissa, I wonder if I could just come back to you first of all, to share a little bit more about why, from Catch 22's perspective, as both kind of practical actors and doing a lot of research in this space, why this is so important when we're thinking about perhaps some of the most disadvantaged young people with the greatest barriers being able to access apprenticeships and opportunities to get into and to progress into good work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think firstly, it's worth just mentioning some of those barriers that may be facing young people that we work with. So many of the young people we work with have experience of the care system, for example, and so lack that kind of financial stability and that safety net of kind of family when they leave care. That's often so important when you're trying to seek work. We also work with young people who've been caught up in the criminal justice system and therefore have often had severely disrupted education, for example. Many of the young people have caring responsibilities themselves, so it might be for siblings or older relatives. Many have poor educational attainment, and that can be for a whole variety of reasons, for different things that have gone on in their lives. some lack kind of digital access and the skills that go with that. And again, we all know in this day and age that actually when you're applying for, training, job opportunities, the majority of that is done over the internet. So a major kind of barrier there. Others are struggling with their mental and physical health, and others simply lack confidence for whatever reason. So, a whole, plethora of potential barriers. And I think if you take those kind of factors into account and also recognise that actually often a young person may be experiencing a combination of those barriers, so it's not just as simple as putting them into a particular box, then you kind of start to appreciate what a challenge it can be to secure a job or an apprenticeship. But also, I think you also appreciate how important it is to have a job in order to find purpose, to give you that kind of stability, and of course, bring the kind of financial security that people need. And I think, therefore, from a kind of employer's perspective, and Talin, I'll bring you in here if that's okay, it's really sort of important to have those potential barriers in mind when you're thinking about your recruitment processes and how daunting it can be for many people when if they've got some of these barriers that I've mentioned when it comes to applying for roles. So for example, filling in a lengthy application form, writing a cover letter, listing your qualifications, these kind of processes can rule people out at that very first hurdle. Young people simply won't get over that first hurdle. So, we'd really encourage employers to think creatively about how they're recruiting. And just one small example, we're seeing more and more companies offering kind of video applications. So a short, couple of minute video of why you want to work here to replace the sort of written one. Talin, just from your perspective, answering kind of Anna's question about I guess what employers could be thinking about in terms of attracting young talent into their organisation through apprenticeships.
Yeah, that's why it's going to be really brief because I do struggle with my words. But with the AI, I'd probably say it's a good example because I've actually applied full time and I didn't get the job just because I didn't meet the criteria because I didn't have the skills for the job. But then coming on this apprentice course, I actually do, which they wouldn't have experienced without the certain processes that they did go through. Because they had asked us for a few questions like, how did you deal with this in the job, how did you go about it? And I didn't answer it to the full level that they needed. But actually coming into the office, a lot of people are coming up to me and asking questions about a function because they don't know what to do with it. So I'm actually helping out with a full-time employee, but yeah, no. I'd say it's helped me out. Some days I have college days where I can go about the business and network. So I'm expanding on the knowledge of the business as well. But yeah, is there anything else that I need to pick up on? Sorry.
No, I think that's really good. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into further discussion, Talin, but yeah, exactly. I think it's that idea, isn't it, of sort of, just thinking beyond those quite prescriptive potential methods of recruiting, and the fact that you were saying, Talin, you were given that opportunity and then your skills are shining through in the workplace, which they would never have known had you just written it on a form. So yeah, that's great. Is that okay, Anna, from us for now?
That's great, thank you ever so much. That's great to hear, and yeah, they're real example of what that looks like in practice and what an employer could have missed out on if they hadn't had that apprenticeship opportunity and thought about how to recruit into it. So really good to hear from you, Talin. Thank you. Olivia, it would be really good to hear from you some of the things that you're thinking about and doing differently in order to recruit young people in the current climate, and thinking particularly about not just now but developing that kind of future pipeline of candidates too.
Absolutely, and our approach has been very much about looking at the roles we need to fill right now, but also again trying to put something back into the industry for the future. So we've rolled out a big programme this year of outreach work, which is working with local colleges and secondary schools and building those relationships and partnerships so that we can be part of their careers programme for their young people. So really catching young people while they're still at high school is really important. We see all the time that our sector is not really represented in secondary schools. It's not perhaps given the value that it should, or even has any kind of voice or face. So we go into the schools and we do careers events and come in and do careers talks and talk to the young people about what a career in early years could look like and where it could take them, what opportunities are available to them, to try and generate that interest and for them to start thinking seriously about it as a career choice. We also invite young people to come and do experience days or work experience weeks, which we think are really important because often people's perception of a particular career is not the reality. And it's important that, you know, that they match, really, for it to be successful and work out. And we do have a training provider who delivers our apprenticeship scheme, but we also work closely with our local colleges, because we recognise that some of our young apprentices that join us will thrive in a you know, an earn while you learn type environment, but others will really benefit from going into colleges. And colleges can offer a slightly different version of the apprenticeship with slightly different type of support with certain aspects of it that you can't really get when you're doing that online, you know, on the job type training. So we work really closely. If we take an apprentice through a recruitment process and then recognise that they would benefit more from being at college, then we will signpost them to that college and work with that college to see them through their apprenticeship. So we have, you know, our finger in lots of pies to try and build relationships and work with our, you know, schools and colleges and look for the best training opportunity and route for our learners, our young people.
Thank you very much. I think what comes through from the conversations we've had as well is, you know, just how much as a business you need to be doing in order to make sure that you can recruit the young people you need. Building on what Olivia said, Gavin, I think you've also been thinking about how you work more with kind of local communities and different groups in order to think differently about recruitment. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, and well done, Olivia, on sort of getting out there to the schools and getting out there to talk to people. I think we need to kind of really sort of debunk a lot of this kind of complexity around apprenticeships. I'll give a quick example about a conversation with my son, which ended up being a conversation with 5 of his other friends as he was weighing up the options between going to college or doing an apprenticeship. And when I said, you can do both, you can do an apprenticeship after college, it sort of blew his mind, and then kind of realizing maybe that's not necessarily the right route. So what we started to realize is for us, careers events and engaging with schools and going to these large events is great. I think it's good publicity for us as organizations, but it doesn't necessarily allow us to tap into the talent that's out there. And a lot of that for us is around community engagement and beginning with parent participation. And actually going into communities, so working with local community centres, youth offending institutes, job centres, yes, but to a point of really kind of what their role is really within that, but really helping to educate our communities around actually what an apprenticeship is and what it represents. And that's really seen us start to get invited to a lot more online events similar to this. I think podcasts and actually fireside chats is something that's really important. I think, you know, even having this recording now is fantastic because you could send this off to anybody around, you know, what's happening out there. I was interviewed by IFATE. There's another acronym being dropped into there, the Institute for Apprenticeships. I actually was on an 1.5-hour call with them because we do a lot of sports apprenticeships. But what we find is that we have a lot of people that go to college because they believe that they need to go to college to work in the sports sector. So we're trying to kind of, you know, debunk whether that's the right route for them or not. So the careers advice and guidance or guardian and carers is really important for us as we start to really kind of bring that knowledge and upskill the knowledge, and to realize that not everybody that's going on to an apprenticeship is going to be 16 to 24. We've still got that, you know, I'm doing an apprenticeship. Well, you can't, mate, you're 55. Well, you can because it's lifelong learning and it's now a degree. And well, what do you mean I can have a degree and doing an apprenticeship? And that collaboration, I think, as Olivia was saying, working with the colleges is really important. I'm sure it's very obvious given my West Country accent. I'm from Bristol in the Southwest. And between Bristol and Bath College, there's actually 30,000 students between those two colleges. The amount of work that goes on in terms of putting them out there and allowing for private training providers and employers to engage with them is quite limited. And I think things like this that's online, being able to engage, send webinars out. I saw some of these stats that you mentioned about, Anna, around, I've lost my piece of paper here now, we mentioned the 28.7% of employers. Well, I actually realised that 47% of 19 to 24-year-olds are accessing YouTube. My little challenge for everybody today is to go onto YouTube and just type in apprenticeships. And I don't know whether it's a legal thing, but that is very much a white space right now that's not being used. and is something that I think, as I'm sure my 15-year-old son is just flicking through countless Instagrams or countless TikToks or YouTube videos, could be something that could be really of use. And I actually attended a careers workshop at a local school yesterday, and the first thing they asked 15 of the pupils to do was to get a covering letter and a CV ready, which I sort of put my arms up and said, no, ask them, what do you like? What do you enjoy? You know, what's your key strengths? What do what could you work on? And really just to start to ask those questions. And hopefully I'm answering the question in terms of the parent participation. To give an example, there was a queue of about 50 young people queuing up to go and see the Robbins Foundation, which is a Bristol City academy linked to a local school. Fantastic, but everybody who's in the queue wants to become a professional footballer. Wonderful. 0.01% I think is around about the likelihood of them becoming a professional footballer. But once we started to explain to them that actually Bristol Sport is the business, and they own Bristol City, they own Bristol Bears Rugby, they own the basketball, they've got a huge complex being built in terms of hospitality roles, front of house, stewarding. So actually start to make them realise that actually Bristol Sport is a business, a large business that they could still work in and be within the sporting environment, but not necessarily just queue up because you want to become a professional footballer. So I think it's really tapping into that community side and just sharing knowledge. Because whenever I speak out, I'll always get people saying, sorry, Gavin, what was the thing again? Where do I go? The Institute for Apprenticeships, and then find a provider. And then where do I, because my kid's leaving next year and I need to know where this is. And what do you do? And as it says, it's a degree here. Can they do that when they're 18? And it's just that kind of, that side of it really, I think is something that we need to engage in and share lots more events like this.
Thank you ever so much. And Simon, what else from your perspective should we be thinking about in terms of that first piece of the jigsaw, so attracting really great young candidates?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I mean, when we spoke about this a week or so ago, I think my thoughts turned immediately to the way we try and attract young people to the jobs that the companies we're working with, attract the right people to those jobs. And I completely agree, when we're doing that, we have to think about all the things that the previous speakers have spoken about. So, what are the barriers those young people are facing? What networks do we need to be talking to get those young people engaged with the right people? How are we leveraging online tools? All of these things are super important. And then I think there's actually quite sort of just practical things that you can do if you're an employer looking to hire a young person. I think the first one, I mean, it sounds fairly straightforward, but just think about the job description language that you're using. So, it needs to be really clear, very engaging, and spell out the tasks and responsibilities of the role that you're trying to fill quite clearly. I mean, remember that these young people are often entering the workplace for the first time. To be honest with you, they have no idea what to expect. So making your job description clear, easy to understand, will really help the right young people to match themselves to it. Just as an example here, we had a client recently who titled their job ad Account Support Apprentice. And we were getting applications for this job for a load of young people who wanted to work in finance. But actually, the company was a performance marketing agency, and the role was about supporting their account management team to look after their customers, a completely different thing. So a small tweak to the job description and the job title helped us to get the right kind of applicants for that position. So, it's just a great example of sort of how slightly confusing or unclear language can damage your ability to attract the right young people. I think the next thing I would say is about, as an employer, thinking about the working environment that you offer and the culture of your organization. So when you're advertising for a role, good candidates are going to explore your website before they apply. I'm sure the team at Catch-22 are telling the young people they're working with before they apply for jobs, go and look at the company's website, explore the people who work there, try and connect with some of them on LinkedIn, look at news articles about that organization. They're really going to be trying to get a feel for the sort of organization you are, and if they're going to fit into your organization as a young person joining it, and if they're going to be supported when they get there. So it's super important that you've considered how your organization appears to the outside world and to young people particularly. To a degree, I guess this is about sort of thinking if your employer brand needs to be adapted ever so slightly to be inclusive and welcoming to young people. And, you know, particularly if you're hiring young people for the first time, it might just be a little test that you could give yourself is, you know, how do we come across if I'm a 19-year-old looking at this company's website? Does it look like the kind of place a young person wants to come and work? And finally, you know, the obvious one, but it does need to be mentioned. And I think there's a question about this in the chat as well, actually. Pay and benefits are crucial. So we advertise hundreds of opportunities every year, and we have really detailed data on which opportunities perform the best. And I can tell you that there are a few key factors. So there's a strong sector bias, certainly. So we see lots of people applying for opportunities in popular sectors or attractive sectors for people to work in. But then the other things to think about are good pay. So, you know, if a role is paying London living wage or above in London, then, you know, it is almost guaranteed to get a higher level of applications than jobs that are paying lower salaries. And actually, young people are particularly discerning about the benefits and perks that people offer. So we're increasingly asking the employers that we're working with to just list out the benefits that they offer as an organization. That might be a bit of extra holiday, day off for your birthday, what your pension arrangements are. All of these kinds of things are actually increasingly important to young people. And I think it's something that, you know, you might think is not that important because it's their first job, and, you know, but actually those benefits are important, and they do make a difference to the number of applications you get for particular roles. So I think, you know, those are just some practical things to think about, and they're really the same things you think about when hiring anybody else. You just have to put that young person's lens onto it to be successful.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Simon. So I'd like us to move on from thinking about that kind of attraction piece to thinking about that process once somebody's applied, that kind of decision-making process about who to take forwards, and the process that we kind of go through between that and offering a young person a job, an apprenticeship, whatever the role might be. Simon and Melissa, I know both of your organisations have done work around that. Melissa, I wonder if I could come to you first to kind of talk us through some of your thoughts around that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks, Anna. So, I mean, a lot of the work that we do when we're supporting young people into apprenticeships is around working with the employers really closely. And I think it's important to recognise that, you know, there are challenges that employers will face when taking on an apprentice, particularly if we're talking about, in our case, you know, apprentices who do face barriers in some way. So a lot of it's supporting them in kind of, as we said, diversifying their talent pool, helping them to kind of appreciate, you know, maybe some of the support mechanisms they need to put in. And actually, we always offer kind of 6 months in work support. This is for our employability work, not just apprenticeships, for the employer as well as the employee. So I think that's the first thing to say. The other thing to say, I guess, is that point about kind of flexibility. And I think Talin kind of alluded to it, or well, explicitly talked about it with the AA. Another example of an employer we worked with called Arcus FM, who are a big facilities management company. We worked with them as part of our employability program we run that gets care leavers into apprenticeship, so supports care experienced young people. A young man applied for an apprenticeship with Arcus FM. They felt he was great, you know, great attitude, great sort of enthusiasm for the role, but that he wasn't quite ready for that level. So they offered him a paid work experience placement, which everyone was sort of really pleased with. But then, as often happens with care experienced young people, his housing situation changed. His bills kind of went up. And so he wasn't able to take that work experience placement. It wasn't paying enough. Anyway, Arcus FM said, okay, you know, we want this guy. He's clearly very good. They offered him the apprenticeship post. But put in a huge amount of support around him, you know, recognise that he wouldn't be able to sort of do exactly what they'd kind of set out. So they put a lot of support around him. He didn't have a driving license, which was part of the requirements. They paid for his driving lessons. So they really invested in that young person and showed a huge amount of flexibility. And I think partly that was because of, you know, kind of colleagues working closely with Arcus and with the young person to demonstrate his value, but also because they saw something in him, you know, during that interview process and were willing to take that step. So I think it is about that sort of flexibility. And as Talin said, you know, sort of, yeah, looking beyond kind of what's on paper and giving people a chance. Talin, do you want to kind of add anything to that in terms of your own experience?
I'd say it's definitely helped me have a platform in this job, and kind of looking at the Q&A answers as well regarding apprentices kind of being a barrier. And parents, so it just depends on how your child functions and works. If they're more hands-on in the job, I'd say that excels so well, because at uni, I'd say it's always been quite daunting. You've had debt, and it's always trying to get into the career path after. Yes, you have all the general knowledge, but you don't have a hands-on job with it. And I'd say it really helps you. It's helped me, and hopefully they'll employ me permanently after this. We'll see, but no.
Yeah, exactly. And just a final thing I'll add, Anna, if that's okay, is that one of the things we try and do is help young people kind of articulate their skills in a way that's relevant to the workplace. So as Talin said, you may not have the practical work experience, and it's that awful catch-22, isn't it? You need experience to get experience, it's horrible. But we have young people come to us saying, oh, I don't have any experience in the workplace, I'm really struggling. We say, okay, what are your interests? What do you do in your spare time? An example, a young person may say, oh, I'm really into gaming. You might think, right, okay, but talk to them, what skills is gaming bringing you, problem solving, teamwork, whatever. And so actually just helping them sort of have the confidence to use some of those other interests they have and apply it to the workplace, I think can be so valuable. And again, we'd encourage employers to look beyond that sort of just work experience on paper, and actually what sort of broader skills do they have.
Brilliant. If I could come to you on that, Simon, as well, in terms of the way you've encouraged lots of the employers you work with to think differently about that kind of hiring process.
Yeah, it's a constant, it's a labor of love to try and get a process that works really, really well. But I mean, I think, Anna, what we stumbled on or realized quite a long time ago now was that if we sent 10 CVs for young people to an employer, it's almost impossible for that employer on the basis of those CVs to pick which one is a strong candidate and which one's a less strong candidate. And actually what that led us to doing was just removing CVs from our recruitment process altogether. And that means that we have to do two things. First of all, we have to have a really robust process that we go through with all of the young people who we're putting forward for opportunities to understand their situation. And, thinking about some of the things that Melissa's just said there, what are the barriers that they're going to face when they get into work? Are their benefits going to change? Are they going to be able to afford to do the job and get to work every day and be reliable for their employer? So we do this entire assessment for all of the young people we're working with, and we give that assurance to the employers that are looking to hire these young people. And that means that the employer basically just has this opportunity to meet some fantastic young people who are ready to go and get their job and start working without looking at their CVs. And that means they're making a judgment on the young person's character, on the way that on their attitude, on the things that they are passionate about, on the way they communicate, the way they fit in with their team, rather than on some grades that they can see on a piece of paper. So I think that's the first thing I would say. The other thing I would say about grades and about academic entry requirements, particularly right now, we've just had 2 years where young people have been through GCSEs or A-levels where they've had teacher assessed grades. And those grades, if I'm perfectly honest, can be quite misleading at times. So I don't think it's, I don't think using grades should be the be all and end all. I don't think you should do away with it entirely, but actually it's something that you should look at with a little bit of flexibility and potentially even some skepticism. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I would say is if you're looking to hire young people, meet them, spend some time with them, get to know them and see if they're going to A, fit in with your team and be a cultural fit for your organization, and B, if they're going to be able to do the job, because there's not a straight line between their grades and what their CV is telling you and their ability to be effective in the role that you're trying to get them to fill. So yeah, I think you have to be a little bit creative when you're trying to recruit young people. But my biggest piece of advice is always get in front of some young people, have some conversations with them, and you will invariably be inspired and think, oh, I can't really afford not to hire someone from this group. And that's what we see happening all the time with our customers.
Great, thank you. So for our last kind of question, I wanted to think a bit beyond the recruitment process and about, as I think a few people have alluded to already, the experience that people actually have when they get into that role and that apprenticeship. That experience is vital for all of us, but especially for young people who might be in the workplace for the first time, and particularly for those who might have found it quite challenging to get that first opportunity. So I'd just like to come to each of you for kind of your top thought, I guess, on what employers should be doing to create that inclusive environment and to help a young apprentice to thrive once they're in post. So Olivia, maybe I could come to you first on that.
I mean, I think that through our conversations and experience with apprentices, but through our conversations with colleges and schools, one of the things that comes through loud and clear is that young people perhaps haven't got, because of the experience they've been through recently, they perhaps haven't got the confidence that they might have had. And I think ensuring that the environment they come into helps to build that confidence is a real route to their success. So we do that through a number of ways, ensuring that they have a really great welcome, they feel like they're part of the team immediately, but that they're given a mentor that works alongside them, who's there to support them, that they have the opportunity to have regular meetings with their mentor and their line manager, so that as things crop up, challenges, barriers, they might not necessarily be barriers within the workplace, they could be external barriers that everybody's discussed, that we can address them and look at what we can do to support or signpost, or what we can put in place to bridge them through that challenging point, so yeah, I mean, they're some of the things that we do to support our apprentices to help them to be successful and get to the end point.
Great. And Gavin, if I could come to you on that question of inclusion and thriving once in role.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I think case studies are really important for us from an employer's perspective, and also from a student or an apprentice's perspective. And I think it's so that they can relate. We also are starting now to lift barriers around the day in the life of. So we actually have sports coaches now that, kind of got a GoPro or their phone, and it's right, it's 9 o'clock. I'm chucking all of the kind of, kit into the car. I'm off to my first school. Then I've got another school. Oh, that one's been cancelled. I'm really starting to give people a bit of an idea about what the day in the life of that role is. I think, more than one occasion on my apprentices that I did my apprenticeships when I was younger was that, you go to a head office or you go to an office and have your interview. You very rarely will be sort of shown around people that you're going to be working with, or to actually see the environment that you're going to be in. Oh, right, I'm not working in this office, so I'm working in that office, and maybe that was a different environment. So I think the closer that we can bring the workplace and the apprentice together, then the better. And I think for me, it's also upskilling employers to let them know that, an apprentice is, if you've got a lot of work on, go and employ somebody, because that's a full-time job. And then maybe they can do an apprenticeship as well. But if you want to bring a young apprentice in, let them come and explore all elements and all parts of the business. And I've done that before with large facilities businesses. And actually, you allow people to move around different opportunities, and they'll realize that maybe actually the cleaning side of it wasn't for them. Perhaps hospitality was a really good environment for them, and it clicked, and that's one that they wanted to go into. So to have that flexibility, I am sure, Talin, that you will be taken on, but also maybe also lifting some bits around, you have to be employed to be on an apprenticeship. So, you're an employee, you're part of that family, part of that business. And I'm sure the AA will be saying you are staying here, but also just letting people know about that, and I often hear those phrases, fingers crossed, I'll get a job at the end of it. It's kind of like, yeah, you're already there, you're already doing a job. So, but it's great to know that you're also having that motivation to lead you towards the end. So I think really opening up about what an occupation area is and what it consists of, everything from the hours to flexibilities and all the things like Simon talked about in terms of all of the benefits that go with it as well. That's it. Yeah.
Thanks, Gavin. Melissa, if I can come to you on that question.
Yeah, can I hand to Talin, because I mean she's in this apprenticeship now. Talin, how are the AA helping you kind of thrive in your role?
So on the college days, obviously we get set work, but I'm too much of an eager beaver and I get it finished in a couple of hours. So I do overviews. So it's kind of like networking the business. It allows me to flow through the business to see how it operates, just dealing with different roles and how it all interlinks with one another. And I'm just more aware on how everything functions, which thanks again for your faith, Gavin. Hopefully I will get an M position in this as well. But yeah, it's definitely given me the opportunity, and I have had a few managers ask for me to go onto their shifts as well. So yeah, I do think it gives more of an idea of how a business works and how I can develop as well, which I wouldn't have had that opportunity originally if this apprenticeship didn't come up.
Absolutely. And I just add a couple of things, Anna, if that's okay, just from our broader experience in apprenticeship. So I think the relationship between the training provider, the manager and the apprentice is so important to get that right. So there's the really good communication and everyone kind of knows, you know, what they're there for and where the support is and that kind of thing. I would totally agree with the mentor point. And also, I think just going back to my original sort of point about quality of work. So I think, you know, knowing for the apprentice there are progression opportunities and how your kind of skill set is building, and that actually we're looking at a kind of, you know, a long-term career here is so important as well.
Wonderful. Simon, anything to add?
Yeah, look, I think I'm going to sound a little bit miserable here compared to everybody else. So I think if I was going to give one piece of advice about helping apprentices to be successful once they've secured an opportunity, it would actually be, and I agree with everything everyone said, but my piece of advice would be about employers setting really clear boundaries and expectations for young people once they've joined a business. So we're really lucky. We work with some very cool, you know, these companies with ping pong tables and pool tables and beer taps and everything in the office. And, you know, if you're a young person, the work hard, play hard culture can sometimes be a little bit difficult to navigate and understand. And I think setting clear boundaries does a number of things. It helps a young person to just really stay in between the tram lines and understand what is acceptable and what's not. But I think it also creates a sort of discipline, and it forms good habits that go with that young person for the rest of their working life. And I think as an employer, you have a responsibility to, when you're taking on a young person, help them to understand what goes and what doesn't. And then, you know, that person will take that with them for the rest of their working life and hopefully be, you know, really effective and understand what a good employee does and doesn't do from very early on. So I think setting those boundaries might sound a little bit harsh, but it's also something that's really important to do, not just for your own sake as an employer, but for the young person's sake for the rest of their working life.
It's really helpful. Thank you, Simon. So I think we've picked up on quite a few questions as we've been going along. There's one in particular around functional skills that I wondered, Olivia, if you might have some thoughts on, because I know we talked a little bit about some of the work you've done with colleges around functional skills. So I wondered if we could just come to you to talk about that.
I mean, it's definitely a barrier for some of our apprentices getting through their functional skills element. So because we have different routes that we can access for our apprentices, we recognise that colleges can probably offer a little bit more support with functional skills than our training provider can for various reasons. And actually having that face-to-face time to sit in the classroom and go and do functional skills is often very beneficial for the young people. So we really look at the assessment process and where they are in terms of their functional skills before we decide which provider would be best for them, whether it's a college or our training provider. So yeah, I think it's important, and that's such a barrier to their success. We often see our apprentices move through their whole apprenticeship, finish everything, but the functional skills are still sitting there, and it can be so disheartening, and such a mountain to climb, such a barrier to getting to the end of their apprenticeship. So yeah.
Thank you. And Melissa, did you want to just come in on that?
Yeah, no, I was talking to a colleague about this very point the other day, and he was saying that, you know, if you think about maths, for example, you can have, so if you're a non-English speaker, often that can be difficult due to the kind of problem solving aspect of the question. So it's not, you know, he was saying if it's not just sort of 2 + 2 = 4, they could do that easily, you know, and they're probably very, very good at maths. But if it's so-and-so has 2 apples and, you know, so-and-so has 2, and then you add that up, you know, it can become really difficult. So you can have people who are we're quite easily past that kind of functional skill level in maths, but can't do so because there's a kind of barrier there with the language. So yeah, but totally agree with Olivia's kind of point about, you know, sort of signposting to a specialist sort of provider to get that sorted. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then we had a question about whether parental attitudes and assumptions about apprenticeships remain a barrier when we're thinking about recruiting young people. Simon, I wondered if you wanted to come in with any thoughts on that.
I mean, I think, yes, I'm undoubtedly it's still an issue. I think compared to 5 years ago, that's changed. And I think one of the things that's fueling the change is the fact that big name brands and big companies are starting to adopt apprenticeships and take on young people through apprenticeships. So, you know, I think you talked about this a little bit at the beginning of our conversation, Anna, about kind of degree apprenticeships, about these forming career pathways for young people who didn't need to go to university, could go and work for one of the big 4 accounting firms and get an accounting degree, become a qualified accountant working for a big 4 audit firm and have a fantastic career ahead of them without debt. That seems like a complete no-brainer and will pass the sniff test. But you know, I think it's still, there's definitely a journey to go on, and it's not, we're certainly not at parity with the university route yet, although I think that's definitely changing and has certainly changed hugely since I started LDN back in 2010.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, everybody. So I'm going to come back to each of you for a quick closing remark of one thing that you'd really like our audience to take away as a result of today and perhaps think about doing differently. But to give you a little bit of a moment to think about that, I just wanted to share with our audience today a few things about what the LPC is doing over the next few months. So as I mentioned at the start, this event marks the first of our new K-Squared knowledge sharing event series, supported by Youth Futures Foundation. We're really keen to create opportunities for those that we work with to share best practice, both within and beyond our kind of immediate network of organisations that we work with. If you have something that you're keen to talk about at an event like this, or a topic that you think we should be exploring in this style of event, then please do get in touch with us. We'll be getting in touch to share a few things by way of follow-up to this, so you will have our details. So we'd love to hear what it is you would like to be seeing at events like this, and particularly anything that you would be really keen to speak on that you think you have a great bit of insight into that you'd like to share. But also do keep an eye out for further events, and we really hope to see you at the next one of these in the new year, which will probably be in National Apprenticeships Week, when everybody will be very busy, so we'll be trying to get in there and get your time before everybody else does. We're also launching this week the first pilot cohort of our new developmental programme. This is a short programme of training for apprentices line managers, which we've developed in collaboration with the Involvement and Participation Association. And the aim of that is to boost young apprentices' progression outcomes via improved line management. So, you know, we've thought a little bit today about what it is that that can really support apprentices to thrive in those roles. And this is one thing that we're lucky enough to be able to test and see if we can make a difference there. So if that's something that you'll be interested in finding out more about for the line managers of any young apprentices in your business, then again, do get in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you about that. And there's a little bit on the slide that you can see at the moment just about some of the kind of core activity that we do as well around end-to-end apprenticeship support for smaller businesses, and brokering apprenticeship levy transfer funding as well. So if those are things that you think you would benefit from, then we'd love to have a chat to you about how we might be able to support you. So if we could go back to our panellists for a very quick closing remark, one thing that you'd like people to think about doing differently as a result of today. Gavin, I'll come to you first.
Brilliant. Yeah, so just quickly for me, I think really it's champion apprenticeships, really starting to follow all the social media links, you know, get online, check out all of the people that are on today for opportunities, you know, whether that's through Twitter, whether that's through Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, when we all get on top of that space that's there. and really just start to, you know, there's a huge amount of information that's out there, both for parents, carers, you know, and support, but also a lot of information out there for employers as well. And I know I've checked out everybody's websites. We've just launched our new website, and I know Simon's and Catch-22's as well in terms of LDN. These are really, really good sites. When you get there, it helps kind of demystify, I think, a lot of what's out there if you were to go down the IFATE route. So, you know, you're a learner, you're an employer, it's really simple and nice and easy. So well done on the sites, but also really just an opportunity just to champion, I think, really is to sort of spread the word, if you like, really, because there is still that myth, and I think it's labour of love. I think Simon put that so nicely, and I think it's always going to be a difficulty. Yes, I'm doing an apprenticeship. Oh, how come you didn't go to college? And I think it's trying to, because actually I'm going to go and earn some money, and hang on a minute, what do you mean? So I think we can all take that away, and that sort of takeaway is to go and check out opportunities that are out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Olivia, if I could come to you for a quick thought.
Yeah, I think from an employer's point of view, this year's been a massive journey for us in terms of our increased apprenticeship programme. And I think embrace apprenticeships. It's an opportunity to grow your own workforce from the ground up, overcome challenges you might have with getting the right people into your business, and give young people a good start in a career and a profession that they could see them through the next 20 years. So, you know, it's positive. It's a positive thing. Our experience has been great.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Simon.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about how complex it all is today, and, you know, it can be a little bit tricky. The biggest thing I would say is that if you're an employer and you're looking to get involved in apprenticeships or hire young people, seek the support of an organization that's been doing it for a long time. I've known Catch-22 for many years. They do incredible work. Gavin and Educationwise just got their Ofsted Outstanding, and even little old LDN Apprenticeships, we're also Ofsted Outstanding. We know what we're doing, and if you're an employer looking to hire young people, come to people who've done it before and get their help, because it does make it all a hell of a lot more straightforward.
Wonderful. And to close us for today, Melissa, if I could come to you and Talin for your thoughts.
Absolutely. I'll let Talin close because I'm sure she's got some great insights, but I would just, I agree with what everyone said, but also say, think about the recruitment process. As a company, how conducive are they to broadening your talent pool? Are they youth friendly? Will they exclude people who may face barriers? And if the answer to that is yes, then think about how you can recruit a bit more creatively. Talin.
Hello, I'll try my best.
Yeah.
So I'm 21, so I've had a bit of a route of the college life as well as the apprenticeship, and I've done 2 different courses at college, and they've not really gone anywhere because I haven't had the platform to excel, or it's just kind of uni that it's gone to, and that's not the route that I'd take. And on this apprenticeship, I've felt more hands-on, that I've learned more, and that I'm able to progress as well. And we've had excellent help from Catch-22. We've had Mark as our trainer, a few people that hadn't come into this apprenticeship with the GCSE of Maths and English, and we've had BKSB to learn off, and they've got the exam that they can go as well, so they can build that foundation for themselves, even if it isn't to continue in this business. They've had the opportunity to get that GCSE and qualification as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Talin. Thanks.
Wonderful. Well, we have reached midday, so I think it's time to close for today. Thank you ever so much, everybody who's attended. Special thanks for our panellists, and particularly thanks for Talin. You've done a brilliant job conveying your experience and the value of the apprenticeship that you're doing. So it's been really great to have all of you. Thank you ever so much, and hope to be able to continue working with all those in the audience today as well.